So this is the first of a couple of thematic videos, and by thematic videos I mean looking at a theme and thinking about how it can be seen in different texts. And the first one that I want to look at is heroes, or what makes a hero. And I've put there that all texts present heroes in different ways, and we just think about the methods to show it. Okay, so we're going to think about what is a hero in literature. And I've got 4 types of heroes. So the physical hero is one, characters who look like heroes. The moral hero, somebody who does good things and that makes them heroic. Icons, characters in literature who the writers want us to idolise somewhat, okay, who are representations of a key message. And then villains. Sometimes we only understand who in these texts is heroic because we understand their antithesis or their opposite. You might pause the video, have a think about which characters in your text you can see as those. Okay, so within this I'm thinking about Lord of the Flies, I'm thinking about Macbeth, I'm thinking about A Christmas Carol, and we're also going to think a little bit about poetry. So the physical hero. Those of you who study Lord of the Flies, Ralph's obviously the golden boy, fair-haired, I proclaim no devil. Piggy tells him he can't half swim well, and we're told about how great he looks at the beginning. Macbeth is Valor's minion. He unseams them from the nave to the chaps. What he does is kind of super heroic. The moral hero. Piggy and Simon have a shell that protects them from savagery. Okay, Piggy caresses the conch, and Simon has those candle buds where they've been creepers before. Macduff's a bit of a moral hero. Horror, horror, horror. He understands that immorality and immoral actions are things to fear. I think some characters in these texts that are icons. I think one of them is Fezziwig in Lord of the Flies. He's an icon, and he's Dickens' view of how we should live. He's charitable, he creates unification, and he's happy. In that big poem, Checking Out My History, I want you to think about light and how his cultural heroes are bathed in light to make them sound godly. And then in Macbeth, you might think about Duncan, golden opinions, silver bloods. He's presented like God's perfect leader on earth. And like we said before, we only really understand heroes, we're understanding villains. You might think about Jack, the head of the creature. The omniscient narrator in Lord of the Flies tells us straight away that he's the villain. Scrooge, red eyes, thin lips blue, before his redemption. Macbeth is a butcher, a hellhound, a tyrant, as well as devilish Macbeth. So, we understand the heroes, we understand the villains. You might pause and make those notes. Okay, quick character revision now. The first one's Macduff. Okay, if you were asked about Macduff, it might be based around the idea of what's a hero, or it might be based around loyalty. And I've just chosen 4 quotations here. Oh, horror, horror, horror. He says that when he finds Macbeth's body. Repetition. The repetition of that shows how speechless he is at the immorality that has been Duncan's death. Okay? He doesn't know what else to say, so he just repeats that word, horror. We know that horror is the worst imaginable thing that you can go through. It's hyperbolic, there's no euphemism to it, okay? He can't put it on, he can't fake it. So he thinks that the death of the divine king is horror. Basically, he sees that hell is coming. He also talks about, oh nation miserable, bleed, bleed, poor country, he says in Act 4. Personification of Scotland is a bit of a sad patient, okay, the one that's suffering a slow death. It's bleeding slowly because of a tyrant. We know that Macduff's in England. He's escaped, but he still thinks of his country. He doesn't need to, but he kind of personifies his country because he is really grieving our slow death it's having under Macbeth. Most sainted king, that's what he says about Duncan. He's a most sainted king, religious illusion. He celebrates, he worships, he puts himself below the divine ruler. He's the opposite of Macbeth, who quickly forgets Duncan, really, okay? And I've just put this, Macduff is sinless, and he sees this sinless character in Duncan. Then at the end, we know that Macduff kills Macbeth, and that creates catharsis. Okay, it's a cleansing. You know, his family have been massacred by Macbeth, so he deserves that revenge. And he says, "Turn hellhound" before he does it. Okay. You know, he calls Macbeth a hellhound. Basically, he's a devil sent animal. Really, he could be anything. And you know, Macduff is his perfect hero who understands that. Another character I think's an icon is Fred in A Christmas Carol. Remember that his eyes sparkled. Okay, that typical light image of the hero. We know that eyes tell the truth. Okay, he's shining, can't be dimmed. We're also told this all in a glow. And again, this is at the beginning, where this image comes from, where he first invites Scrooge in Stave 1 to Christmas. We know that glow has connotations of religion, warmth, comfort, safety, okay, and it's juxtaposed against the coldness of Scrooge. And it forces us to see that he's the hero because he's so opposite to the villain Scrooge. Come, down with us tomorrow. If you're writing about Fred in your exam, I want you to think about how he is a symbol of the gospel value of forgiveness and faith. You know, he could easily present it as somebody who washes his hands of Scrooge, but he doesn't. And he also says, "Merry Christmas, Uncle, God save you." Okay, godly imagery. So he's given this kind of biblical lexis there. He's not as rich as Scrooge, but the goodness and holiness in him is a bit like Tiny Tim. He speaks in kind of godly language. So for me, Fred is Dickens' icon. He basically tells his 9th century privileged, if you all behaved like him, everybody would be happier for it. For those of you who love the flies, I think if we think about a hero, we're probably going to think about Simon. Okay, candle buds and getting the fruit from the trees. Remember in chapter 3, he goes into the jungle and he picks fruit from the trees that the little ones can't reach. Religious and spiritual imagery. Okay, I want you to think about that gospel of Jesus feeding the 5,000, because that's what Simon does. He feeds that mass of little ones who can't feed themselves. And we know he's a Christ-like figure. What I mean is, maybe it's only us and you'll get back all right. He says both of those to Ralph. And I want you to think about this idea of omniscience or all-knowing. Okay, he's proven right. It is only us. There is no beast. It is only the boys. And they do get back all right eventually. Golding presents him as this kind of godlike figure who can see what's important. We know the boys treat him unfairly. Okay, at different points in the text, he's called batty, he's called queer, and he's called strange. And the way that they demean him in their voices foreshadows the brutality that is going to be enacted on him. Okay, we see him as a bit of the victim, basically. And as readers, we get this idea that, you know, this hero isn't treated as such by the rest of the boys. And listen, we know that, don't we, when he dies? Because when he dies, the boys come together and they become the beast. The tearing of teeth and claws and tore bit chew. So, like Jesus, heroes are treated with barbarism. We know from Stations of the Cross, and we know from the crucifixion, that Jesus as a hero is treated barbarically in the Bible, and Simon's the same, okay? We see him as a hero because of the inhumane way he's treated. And like I say, teeth, claws, tore bit chew, all the language that Golding uses to describe Simon's death is animalistic and beastly. We know at the end that the sea washes his body away. And a bit like in Macbeth, the earth was feverish to the shake. A bit like there, we see that nature mourns its heroes, and it protects Simon and it cleanses him at the end. Okay, God's creation mourns but protects God's creation. So that's Simon. And I also think if we think about heroes, narrative voices, checking out history is important. Okay. Right at the beginning, we see that it's got dialectical. Remember, dialect language is words that only a certain group of people use. Accented language. Okay, he speaks, he writes it the way he speaks. So dialectical and accented language shows the heroic voice of the speaker. This speaker refuses to be silenced or censored or kind of dubbed into English, and that is heroic. He's basically saying my culture is important. We know that when he talks about British culture, he talks about it using fairy tale language. He ridicules it. But when he's talking about his own culture, we see it looks different. So Nanny, Seafar Woman, Toussaint, the beacon, Fire Woman, a healing star. So when he talks about his own culture, it's always in italics, so it looks different. It's always in free verse, so there's no set rhyme scheme. It's always full of enjambment because he won't be interrupted or he won't be constrained by punctuation. And there's always the motif of sight and light. Nobody can control him. He's seen the light. So those italicized stanzas become a bit of an epiphany. Think about how he talks about Nanny de Maroon, Fire Woman. She's a bit like a superhero. He also says Toussaint the thorn to the French. Okay, and he uses that metaphor to show physical resistance. Again, this line said with a tone of celebration. So when he talks about his own people and his own culture, they're always doing something heroic. And then right at the end of the poem, he says, I'm carving out my identity. Remember at the beginning, he was blinded and bandaged to his identity. He couldn't see. When you carve something, it's done with permanence and it's done with force. It ends with a sense of empowerment. Okay, he will find his voice and he'll find it forever. Lovely. Right, I've put some questions there, and in your own revision, you might now go on and write a paragraph of that and think about your layering. Okay, but hopefully that's useful. It's a bit of work on heroes in our literature texts.